So on behalf of Gender Island Research Group, we would like to welcome you to the 5th Caring for the Future webinar. And today we have the honor of having Professor Firouz Gaini as our guest, and I will introduce him in a short while. But first, I want to let you know that we're recording, and we want to put this on, or we will put this on our webpage with a YouTube link. And it is GIF's, so GIF is short for Gender Island Future's intention to produce knowledge in collaboration with written theoretical text as a usual way of producing knowledge, but also to collaborate closely with local participants, local people and participants in our research, and local stakeholders, and international fellow academics. We find it important and enriching to bring early empirical knowledge, thoughts, and wonderings into life with other scholars that think in the same lines or perhaps even challenge these lines. And in other words, we wish to create a research network or an academic kin, as Nana posted, if you like. While GIF is specifically interested in motherhood and change through intergenerational relations, everyday life, and imaginations, there are some overall themes that many of us share, even though it is not specifically motherhood and generation. We wish to endorse a space where we can discuss overall shared themes of caring for the future from various focal points, and hope that you will embark on this journey with us. And the next Caring for the Future webinar is on the 5th of December, where Dr. Marcin Smiatana, who's also here today, will join us, a research associate at Cambridge University. And note that down so you can come next time. Before I present our guests, I want to briefly describe the outline and frame of the webinar. We have set aside 1 hour for this talk. It begins with a presentation from Firouz for approximately 30 minutes. And the latter half of the webinar will be an open floor where reflective questions, thoughts, and discussions are welcome. We hope this to be a space where we can explore, reflect, and challenge shared academic interests in the matter of reproduction, parenthood, intimate lives, and change. Now to presenting our guest, which I have the privilege to do. Firouz is a professor in anthropology at the Department of History and Society at the University of the Faroe Islands. With a long and impressive career, he has centered his research on the themes of islands, island studies, youth, migration, fatherhood, and social change, and has written extensively on these topics. And with no further ado, the floor is yours, Firouz.
Thank you very much, Turi. Thank you for a very nice introduction. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, I have some problems with the computer, but I'll try to speak clearly and loudly. So I've been looking forward to this seminar and honored to be invited to give a presentation here. So I'll start by trying to share my screen. Let me see. Here. Do you see the screen? Good. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to talk about a project or a study looking at young people's narratives on caring, fatherhood, and family life in the Faroe Islands. And let's see if I can. Yeah. So this presentation is connected to 2 projects. The project which is called the Faroese Fatherhoods, exploring everyday life, family life, and masculinity across 2 generations of men in contemporary Faroe Islands, which was from 18 till 22 at the university, based in the University of the Faroe Islands. But it's also related to the new ongoing project that is the frame of this seminar also, the Gender Island Futures intergenerational perspectives on motherhood and change in the Faroe Islands. So you can say that I'm trying to build a bridge between these two projects and hopefully make some of the data from the Fatherhood project meaningful also in this new project. And both are obviously, and as Turi also mentioned, examining parenthood, gender, family life, social change in the Faroe Islands. I don't think I need to say very much about the context. I think all of you know some basic facts about the Faroe Islands in the northeastern Atlantic Ocean, autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark, population of approximately 55,000 inhabitants. And so small, relatively remote islands in the North Atlantic. So I'm going to start by talking a bit about time and future, because it's an important, when you look at young people's narratives and thoughts about fatherhood and family life, there is an important temporal dimension in the reflections and the way they connect the past, the present, and the future in the narratives. And these are influenced by their generation, their time, and the place. So it has also been important for this project or sub-project within the Fatherhood project, which looks at the young people's perspectives and narratives. Anthropologists have always engaged with the future, or maybe rather futurity, as an underlying temporal element in their ethnographic work, but the future was relatively absent as a theme and special object of research up to the end of the 20th century. And today there is a large and growing literature on the temporal aspects of youth lives and also generations and family relations. Time is an important methodological, empirical, and analytical category, says, for instance, Harriet Bjerre Nielsen, the gender and family researcher, referring to qualitative, longitudinal, and life history research. Harriet suggests that increased diachronic awareness could form part of the assumption made by researchers using synchronic data. This is very relevant for the Gender Island Futures projects, indeed. Focusing on young people. In their everyday struggle, young people make strategies to deal with the present and engage with the future. And their future thinking and work of maintaining hope is closely linked to what you can call waiting temporalities in relation to the capacity of coping with complex everyday lives. You can also say that waiting is an integral part of life, and that sometimes among young people, time may feel like it's passing too slowly or too quickly, and these changes and these temporal feelings generate also feelings of discontinuity and turbulence, temporal turbulence. Temporal imagining and reasoning can also help us better understand young people's images of the relation between the past and the future, as well as the creative strategies aiming to hit the right pace in relation to essential decisions influencing their future as adults. Young people have images of the future which frame future scenarios, and these can serve as active elements in young people's concrete present-day practices. So the future images are also commenting on the present. Young people's contrasting images of the future, therefore, comment on a wide range of everyday life aspects, reflecting their sense of belonging and cultural identity, family, and social networks, and so on. And the waiting, or the art of waiting, as you could call it, is a tool, a powerful tool for the negotiation of youth, adulthood, continuities and discontinuities. We all wait for the future, says Rondo, yet not the same ones, and nor in the same way, nor in the same tempo. There's not one future. There are many futures. The future imagination also represents a struggle for the right to define your own future culture and society, or to influence the definition of your culture and society, individually and collectively. So young people's creative narratives can produce contested versions of the future, or futures, resting on the history, looking back, but also on the culture of the place that they belong to. Yeah. So if we now look at the father, or the new father, as the literature often talks about. During recent decades, a plethora of research has shown how men's fathering practices have been under a slow but steady transformation towards more caring, intimate, and emotionally engaged ways of being a father. And these studies have examined fathers' involvement in the upbringing of children in different country contexts. Family policies, which aim to engage fathers in more hands-on parenting, in connections between men's fathering and masculine identities, and also fathers at work, just to mention a few examples. This trend, you could say, hints a turn in male parenting in Europe and North America, as the focus in research, the dominant research in social sciences has been in the global north. So this turn from the turn of the century, with so-called active caring fatherhood, is becoming broadly, culturally more accepted. This type of father, generally speaking, this new father of the global north, represents what Edley and Wetherell argue is a softer, more sensitive and caring individual. And they say that he is the ideal partner for the modern liberated woman. But how is such caring and intimacy understood and practiced by differently positioned men? And the woman they care with, and the children they care for. So caring fathers refers to everyday care of sons and daughters who may be infants, children, or adults, but in the research it's been very much focused on the younger children. By fathers and a multitude of ways this may be interpreted by men and those around them. So if we look at the Faroe Islands, the context of the Faroe Islands, I'm going now during this presentation to explore the cultural meaning of care in relation to fathering practices through the lens of adolescents or young people's personal narration in the Faroe Islands. The Faroe Islands is a society in what has been called the father-friendly Nordic region by Brandt and Planten. But it is at the same time sometimes being presented as a Nordic exception, different from the other larger continental Nordic countries because of its conservative religious and family values. The small-scale and sparsely populated society, located far from the urban hubs of the Nordic mainland, has, in the same way as many other Nordic rural communities, rarely been the target of fatherhood research. So the Faroe Islands is a member of this Nordic family of states engaged in care and work-family policy initiatives to promote women's labor market participation and fathers as carers. As Helene Tristed-Nielsen, among others, have mentioned. Nevertheless, the Faroe Islands has a high level of familialism in its societal fabric, higher, in many ways, higher than in the other Nordic countries. Fewer women working full-time, more men having long-distance work, family networks having a more central role in the life of many individual citizens. And you could also maybe mention the fertility rate, which used to be much higher, but it's decreasing now, but it's still relatively high, let's say, in the European context, as well as the paternity leave arrangements that are less attractive. Faroese fathers spent fewer days on paternal leave on average than fathers in the other Nordic countries, according to Hayfield and Nordic statistics. A survey made in 2020 reveals that many more people in the Faroe Islands, compared to the other Nordic countries, disagree with the proposal that parental leave should be equally divided between parents. Very few studies have examined fathering in Nordic rural and small island communities. Fathering practices, Berit Brandt says, are surprisingly absent from the international literature on men and masculinity in rural societies. It's also worth mentioning, as other researchers, for example, Eerola, have emphasized in their work, that Nordic fathers, despite a so-called father-friendly culture, continue to be at greater liberty to decide the terms of their engagement and participation. So while the severity of the problems or challenges related to parenting, care, and gender equality might be very uneven across the countries, there seems to be a growing global focus on responsible and caring fatherhood. Yeah, and then I would like to tell a few words about the project. So this sub-project, which involved young people, was based on an assignment or task where young people aged 14 and 15 were writing individual essays. And we received 32 essays for this part of the project. And the introduction to the essay in English translation is the text that you can see on the screen. In this text, we shall describe the Faroese father in 2020 through reflection on these themes of his life: children, family life, working life, career, masculinity, identity, equality, equal rights, values, and styles, You're welcome to combine and merge the topics as you like. Say something about temporal change. What do you think has changed in the last 3 to 4 decades in the Faroe Islands regarding the father's role and family life? Welcome to discuss other additional questions, illuminate the story about the Faroese father. So this was the main material we had for the project, focusing on the young people. And I'm going to give you some examples from the material. So young people experience and reflect on contemporary events, new and changed or altered paternal identity and taboos in the Faroe Islands, which are informed by, yet also different from, their father's own experiences of being fathered. The external view of the parents from the insider, the teenage daughters and sons in the family, reveals the predicaments of the present-day Faroese father with what I have illustrated in some of my work as one leg in the local or traditional father and one leg in the global or so-called new father model of fatherhood. Jake writes in his essay about his parents who perform parenthood with equal division of household chores. He says in his essay, my mother and my father both have long higher education and work full-time. I don't think there is a real difference in what is masculine and feminine today. In my family, it is, for instance, nothing strange that mother might wash the car and father wash the clothes. And I don't think this makes them feel more feminine or masculine. I think I was raised with the belief that men and women have opportunity to do the same things. So he portrays his family life as being organized around gender equal parenting and what you could call caring family. Betty, who is the youngest of a group of 5 siblings, writes about her father, mother father, she calls him. She says, Daddy is such a good and modern father. He helps at home, taking care of chores, together with mom, such as cleaning, hoovering, and washing the house. He also really likes keeping everything nice outside of our house. Together with mom, he frequently prepares nice and healthy dinners on occasions to gather the whole family, now counting 11 people. In fact, mom and dad go to great lengths to keep the family together. Furthermore, daddy is good at helping me with homework and, for instance, when I need to rearrange my bedroom. So from this quote, we can see that Betty is delighted to have a caring father who is active at home and eager to contribute to work promoting shared caregiving, fatherhood, and some kind of gender-free parenting, as Doucet calls it. Frida is another participant in our project. She writes about her father's personality and close relationship with children. And she says, among other things, he's always there for me, and he is with me when I need it. Daddy makes everyone smile, even if they are not happy that day. I always have Daddy as role model. If someone asks Daddy to do them a favor, he does it. He has taught me so many things that I am happy to know. For instance, I have learned to identify things in a car that are not working or that need to be fixed. I usually help Daddy repairing our car and our boat. So, yeah, Frida talks about her father, relatively young father, who doesn't live with her mother, and explains that she also tells in her essay that she's happy that her father is happy and has found himself a new woman after divorcing the mother. Another example is Amy. She reflects on changes in fathering practices and images of fatherhood in the Faroe Islands in her essay. And she says, among other things, we always hear stories about how tough the masculine man used to be. The stories always start with, when I was young. In the past, you got married and you got children, that was it, even if you did not love your partner. You can imagine a father from the 50s or 60s wearing a horse-knitted jersey, rubber boots, looking dirty and smelling of wind-dried leaves. My father is not like that. He's shopping, playing football, and other things like a modern father would do in his everyday life. He's healthy and does a lot of training and looks really happy. So, like some of her peers, Amy uses history and what you could maybe also call some myths from the history about the past to delimit and insulate representations of today's father. Her father is not like that. She stresses in emancipation from stereotypes of Faroese fatherhood. I'm soon reaching the end of the examples, but here's another one by Tom, or from Tom. And he is, like several of the others, he is talking about fishermen. In the Faroe Islands, he says, or he writes, many fathers have been fishermen, and therefore they have only been at home for limited periods of time when the family was young. Nowadays, men are not at sea for more than 3 months at a time. I know that Granddad was away for 5 or 6 months at a time, and then just came home for a very short visit before going back fishing. And my father is not away for more than 4 days at a time, but he is just sailing between 2 islands here in the Faroe Islands, so he is not far from home. Me and my father, we do a lot of things together. The seaman or the fisher has for generations, or if not centuries, been a national hero in Faroese cultural narratives. He's like an icon of the nation in many cultural narratives and songs and stories, symbols. But since the end of the 20th century, he has lost his high status among many young people who do not want to work far from home. They do not want to work at sea. Things are changing there. Yeah, this will be the last example from the data. Lena says, or writes in her essay, today's fathers are not as masculine as their own fathers were, and they are much softer. They express more sentiments and are not afraid of revealing that they cry when something affects them. Today, some men can even cry while watching a movie, something which was unheard of in the past. Today, fathers also help much more at home, and they do all the chores together with their wife or partner. They are on paternal leave, they make food, they wash, and help with homework. Yeah, so Lena, like several other participants in the study, emphasizes and defends somehow the father's, Faroese father's transition to a more emotional care of fatherhood. So the narratives of the youth reveal that one of the most central aspects of being a good father is to spend time with your children and be there for your children. The young people's images of the Faroese father have resulted in a kind of open-endedness concerning the father's position between the new and the not new or old father models from fatherhood research in our part of the world. Young people talk about what we usually call the modern father at the same time as they value the father's bonds to the Faroese fathers of the past. And rather than talking directly about a new father, which is probably something that scholars do more than any other people, the young people trace new practices of caring fatherhood with strong local cultural anchorage. Dermot has talked about the plasticity of contemporary fathering, referring to practical caring, allowing the development of a close relationship that is disassociated from equal co-parenting and shared childcare. So nurturing fatherhood, if you use that concept, is an option without the precondition of radical change in local fathering practices. And this is somehow concurring with what we have observed in the essays written by Faroese teenagers. In their essays, the young people say that the father-child relationship is based on a fathering style, creating patterns of communication and emotional ties, aiming for the elaboration of children's autonomy. The Faroese father embodies some of the practices and qualities that are usually mentioned in the discussion about Nordic style, reflective, or intimate fatherhood. But as the participants in our study have demonstrated, this father, the Faroese father today, is also shaping his fathering style and relationship with the child based on local knowledge linked to what you could call Faroese culture or Faroese cultural and family values. So the study reveals that the youth generation is engaged in conversation about changing fatherhood values and new fathering practices, with focus on four main themes influencing the father-child relationship and everyday life of the family in general. Equal care is at the core of their narratives. No matter how young people portray their father's working life and identity. And the question of care is linked to the discussion about the supportive father who protects and inspires his children. And according to the young people in our study, the supportive father is also often forgotten or ignored in debates, public debate about parenthood and caring fatherhood in the Faroe Islands. To try to conclude, the study has revealed the essential and active role of the past generations of fathers, in narratives about contemporary Faroese caring fathers. The combination of the cultural values of equal care, being supportive, and caring for the past leads to the images of the so-called softer dads, or more caring, hands-on dads, prioritizing hands-on caring at the same time as they sustain cultural bonds to the fathering styles of their own fathers and grandfathers. The far-reaching changes in gender relations around the globe, says Hummel, produce ferociously complex changes in the conditions of practice with which men as well as women have to grapple. So undeniably, modern fatherhood is complex and multidimensional. There is also growing documentation in European fatherhood research showing that, as Miller says, men are taking increased responsibility for child care, first and foremost in dual income families. So in this presentation, we have seen that young people observe and experience these changes from a perspective uncovering dynamics of intergenerational relations and family temporalities. So it is, in a way, a view from the future, because young people reflect on the past and the present by imagining and portraying the future as an alternative to current realities. Yeah, I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Firouz. That was so good. Thank you so much. That was perfect. I want to quickly just open the floor. So if you have any questions, thoughts, reflections, ideas, raise your virtual hand, and I can ask you to unmute. I can perhaps start with a question. So I really appreciate your notes on or your further elaboration on what your purpose of bringing and the benefits, or like the analytical point of bringing in youth perspectives and of how they are looking into how they represent the future and stuff like that, right? So I really like that, because it makes me think of my time in the Faroe Islands when I was doing my PhD, and these, I was working. We had our third child, and I went to work after 6-7 months, perhaps, and we kept getting these like comments from other people our age and older, like how amazing my husband was, and like having all these children and taking care of the children, staying at home, and like doing the shopping and blah blah. And then this, really like being amazed of how he invested in the family. And also negative comments on me going to work. But when you bring in the youth perspectives, this wouldn't coincide with the comments that I got, right? So if we think of the youth, like we would imagine, like the youth that you've been sharing, like their perspectives, like if they saw my husband walking with these kids, they would not then bring in these comments. So you can like see the gradual change, perhaps, like kind of thing. But that was just another. Like I really enjoy you bringing in the youth. But then, like, could you say any words like what could we use like the island perspective on? And I know perhaps it's a huge question, and you are, an expert on island studies. But like, could you perhaps just say a couple of words on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, comment. Yeah, I think, I think the island perspective or island approach is important. But of course, when you are located in the Faroe Islands and you all the time you see the ocean and the islands when you look through the window, you have to be careful not to make everything islandish, you know. But definitely, it is important, and I think one, if you think about the father and parenthood and family life, you can't avoid looking at the history and the maritime traditions, the work at sea. It's so important, even if most men today don't work at sea, and some are very rarely in a boat even. Still, it's so fundamental for many thoughts and images and symbols about the father and the family, which used to be, and of course, in many families it continues. I mean, I don't say that there are no fisher families. There are many, and not least where Nana is staying in Klaksvik. But it has changed. So the role of the sea as workplace, a dangerous workplace, and a place where you had to stay for a long time and thereby very long time far away from your closest family is one of the first things that I think about when you mention the island. But the other part of it, which Erika Hayfield, among others, have looked at, is also the very close, so dense and close social and family relations, making it very difficult to engage in different important discussions. For instance, about gender equality or about parental leave, and many important issues concerning family life are very difficult to discuss without at the same time being forced to how do you say it? Think about or talk to people that you are related to in some way or the other, which might make it difficult for you to get your point or get your message out, which is very has a very strong influence, for instance, in the political debates, so that you have maybe what in lack of better formulations, these conservative religious values that most of the young people that were involved in my project are not identifying with, is still so important, and is having such a weight, heavy weight in the political discussion. So there you can see maybe that something about not only islands but small islands, small insular in a way islands influences how difficult it is to move some often general tacit beliefs about how the families, our families should be organized. So there is also something about islands.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that makes really good sense. Nana has a hand, and then Marcin also has a hand. Nana?
Yes, I had to unmute myself. Firouz, I wonder if you could stop sharing your screen because then we can see each other.
Of course.
Um, better. There you go. Thank you so much for your presentation, Firouz, and also for your article. I think I have recently taught from this article. It came out recently, right?
Yeah, it's it's not totally new, but yeah, within.
So I have recently have the privilege of teaching this article also to young students at the Froskaparsettre.
Okay.
So thank you so much for sharing that knowledge and that research with the world, because it makes an impact and it creates new discussions. One of the questions that we had in the classroom when we discussed your article, and that I think maybe in our present project about intergenerational changes and gender roles in the Faroe Islands, that maybe this is where we will write a joint article together, all of us or something. It is this question. So what happens to the other caring roles around children when fathers' roles change and they become more involved in the parenting? Because many times and I think also maybe in the literature on Nordic parenthood, there is an assumption that the caring for children has to do with a mother and a father, and somehow between the two they have to divide 100% caring, right, for this child. But in the Faroese context, as you also mentioned now, we are part of very close-knit family units that are often also living together in several generations. And so the caring for children often is also carried out by a bunch of other people, not least grandparents, but also often other kinds of relatives, which would be siblings to parents or even sort of further out relatives. So I think an interesting question in the intensification of fathering is that then a move towards nuclear family lifestyles, or are the other caring roles still as present in the lives of children?
Very good question. It's a good question. I think we are somewhere in between there. I think you're right that there are many other persons important for the caring of the children, and we have some information on that in not in this part with the young people, but in some of the other material. One of the researchers involved, Rona Priti, she also talked to grandfathers, and through a new generation, she got some more information on that part. That's true, and I think what we are trying to do in the Gendered Island Futures project with links through different generations is a very good method in order to get a more thorough image of what is going on in the caring and the relations in the family. But it is, but I mean, there is a kind of, I think there are several layers. So one thing is maybe the nuclear, the small family, parents, children, in relation to the larger family unit, entity, network. And the other is connected also to the new role of the father. They are somehow linked to each other, but in the kind of modern nuclear family values, they have been quite strong for a while, even if you also have the aunties and grandmothers. So when people present the family and in pictures or in news, in magazines and on the internet, it's very often it's the nuclear family, the two parents, and it's very kind of heteronormative, a mother and a father and between 2 and 4 children.
Mm.
And you see it in advertisements. And for example, if you look at the Smyrna line, the annual advertisements about the family trips to Denmark with a car, it's always a very blonde woman and a very blonde man and 3 very blonde smiling children. You don't see any foreigners or nobody else. It's very kind of stereotyped image, and I think that is it's very strong in the discourse on the family. At the same time as we still have also in day-to-day activities and communication, we still have the larger network also. Yeah, you can see it in the way houses are also planned. But the 4 children is getting more unusual. Now it's 2 or maybe 3, but the groups, children's groups, siblings number are getting smaller. But yeah. But,
Thank you so much for that, Firouz. It's really inspiring to discuss. It's the kind of questions I'm also sitting with at the moment, and especially also with the way that families are, the images of families, but also the houses and how houses work in the everyday life. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Sorry, I was interrupted. But I hear you. And Marcin, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your talk. I also found it very interesting, both those practices that the research participants were describing and their imagination, and how you set it in the context, which is quite important. And I was wondering if I would just ask 2 questions. One question I have is about the future as a research object and term, because as I get it right, it's also been part of your broader research project, right? You mentioned the gender island futures, and it's been visible in the narratives a little bit, how that imagination or vision links somehow the present and is a basis for the future. And is somehow different from the past, right? But so this has been fairly visible. But I was just wondering if you had any further thoughts or insights, or if you've been working within the project on the future as a research object, or also, or as a concept, or as a term in this kind of research, because you introduced it quite interestingly at the beginning of the talk as well. And I think it's quite a fruitful avenue. So I was just curious about this, if you could talk a little bit more. And one other thing, if we have time, just very briefly, about the methodology. I found it very interesting, that essay methodology. So could you just say briefly how you did it? You asked, I mean, how the people were invited or recruited, and they were asked to write essays, as I understand, right?
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
so yeah, a very interesting approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the first question about the future. I have been interested in the future in research for a couple of years, and actually, maybe in the material on the based on these essays, it's a bit hidden. So it's like they don't say much about concretely about what is going to happen in 20 or 30 years. So it's more like packed into the way they talk about the family. But in another project that I did some years ago, also among young people, I had a quite similar design with essays, but where I asked them to comment or reflect on some topics, some themes in Faroese society, based on how they think it will be in 30 years into the future. So there it was more kind of explicitly part of the plan or the project. And I thought it was very interesting because and it was also, I mean, I think it's interesting in general in youth research, but not least also in the Faroese context, where the talk about the future and future scenarios, future images, made the young people feel kind of allowed to come with more kind of experimental and alternative, crazy ideas about what can change in a way. Things that they wouldn't dare maybe say if you talked about today or tomorrow. So it was an interesting, I think it was a very interesting way of explaining some of the tensions and movements in the Faroese society today, not by looking at what happened in the past, but how you look at something to the imagined future, you can say. A way of commenting on kind of smart way of commenting something on your life today without feeling maybe too burdened by this. And afterwards, of course, there's a lot of interesting research also from Aarhus among anthropologists in Aarhus who work with youth and the future. Your other question, yeah, about the essays. I mean, I think I was very. I felt it was inspiring to work in that way, and it was an exciting way of working. But at the same time, of course, it's also tricky because so what I did. Yeah, because it's not like an interview, and you can't really control what they are saying, and you don't know how they maybe how they try to please you. But that would, of course, that would be the case in many qualitative research situations. But what I did was that I got contact to young people through some school classes. But at the same time, I didn't want it to be dependent on the teachers, so I got like contact to these groups of young people from school classes, 8th grades, and then I told them a little bit about the project and gave them this title. And they were given a timeline or a deadline, suggested deadline to answer, and most of them didn't do it digitally. Actually, it was in paper. Yeah, so that I collected. But what I have afterwards, when I've been assessing this method, I think that the school has maybe influenced a bit more than I hoped for. I can't say it's for sure, but in some of the essays, it looks like they are trying to say something that teacher maybe told them to focus on, but I'm not sure about it. So yeah, but I think the good thing is that it's also one thing is the information, the thoughts and the images, scenarios that you can get from the youth in this way, which sometimes is difficult to get. Maybe in an interview, maybe could be a little bit like a diary method somehow. So maybe a little bit similar. Yeah, but it's the challenge is afterwards also when you're going through the material and you're organizing and trying to analyze it. It's also how to kind of look at the dialogue between what is personal experience, maybe from the personal life, and the more general, broad ideas about society. But which is also a very rich information if you manage to get a kind of overview of that, because then you can say that it's a method where you can partly, for example, if it's about the future, you can partly talk about your own future trajectory, hopes, or projects, or aspiration, and at the same time, how that is linked to a more general image about Faroe society, or even maybe the world, dangers, risks. And that I found very exciting, but yeah, it's because it's not a common method. It's a bit difficult to yeah. You have to learn. You have to learn by doing, in a sense. But yes, but I think it's very good in addition, not just alone, but maybe combined with some other, like interviews or some other observations or other material. Then I think it's you can kind of look at them together. In that sense, it's very valuable. Yeah. I don't know. It was a bit vague, maybe, but I can try to answer in more details later if you like, Martin. You can write to me, or yeah.
Yeah, thank you. No, and absolutely, it's been very, very informative. Yeah, that's precisely what I was aiming at when asking. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And I think we should 7 past for now. I think we should, or at least Danish time, not for everyone. Say thank you very much for joining everyone today, and thank you, Firouz, for sharing your research with us. It was very informative and inspirational. Thank you so much. And remember, 5th of December, join us when Marcin we will talk about queer reproduction, queer parenthood, right? And stuff like that. So more on that later, and you will all get an invitation, and we can share among our colleagues and stuff. So thank you so much for today. Have a very happy Halloween to everyone. And thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.